Good evening, boys and girls. It is late at night. I cannot sleep again. And what do I do when that happens? I enjoy the drink of Unboxing Champions, and it will help keep me awake even more so that it'll take me even longer to go to sleep. And I talk to all of you because that's just the smart thing to do. Anyway, wanted to start up a new segment of the show. While we're waiting for pickups to arrive, because I actually just placed a rather hefty sized order for the Criterion Collection because they're having their 50% off sale with Barnes and Noble. Most of it will be shipped to me. Three of them I have to pick them up physically at the store, which is okay. And so I'll be able to show those off once they arrive. But yeah, so in the meantime, between that and another one, wanted to do a new segment of the show where we talk about, horror films that I find are very underrated or underappreciated relative to what people seem to remember them for, or rather, they don't remember them. And first up in this series is a little movie from 2008 called Untraceable, and this was a movie that I think deserves much more of a positive reputation than it has gotten. A lot of people may not necessarily remember this film. I remember the trailers for this film very well because this came out, I want to say like January 2008, something like that. That was during, it came out at a time when usually a lot of movies just kind of go to die, or at least they did back when, the theatrical release schedule was a certain way, and obviously pre-coronavirus and everything, because the whole structure of everything has completely changed. And Marvel kind of upended the game when they started putting out blockbusters in April and August and these other months that tended to not have good business. But then again, they went out and they put out their big movies during those seasons when movies would normally go to die. And then, like, the wide release of American Sniper was in January 2015. So yeah, the rules are all up in the air now. But before all that, January 2008, this dropped, and I remembered the trailers, and I thought the premise was pretty interesting, but I never saw it until many years later. And I watched it, and I have to say, this film, it really, I think, was quite prophetic for its. It was way ahead of its time. So just to give you a little idea, so on the back, within the FBI, there exists a division dedicated to investigating and prosecuting criminals on the internet, which there still is, and if anything, it's probably been greatly expanded since the time of this movie. Welcome to the front lines of the war on cybercrime, where Special Agent Jennifer Marsh, played by Diane Lane, and Griffin Dowd, played by Colin Hanks, have seen it all until now. A tech-savvy internet predator is displaying his graphic murders on his own website, and the fate of each of his tormented captives is left in the hands of the public. The more hits his site gets, the faster his victims die. When this game of cat and mouse becomes personal, Marsh and her team must race against the clock to track down this technical mastermind who is virtually untraceable. Dun dun dun. Well, here's the thing. This movie, so this came out early 2008. The internet culture as we know it today, and just the different facets of the internet as it has been defined now. Like, Facebook was just starting to become mainstream. Twitter hadn't even come out yet. YouTube wasn't capable of showing off anything above like maybe 360p or 480p videos. They didn't even do HD yet. So it was a different world back then, much more different than you may even necessarily realize. And this was before the deep web or even the dark web, before they were in the public consciousness. I believe that it was in existence at this time, but the public didn't really know about it, and it didn't have quite the hubbub that it has today. And what makes this film special to me is that this movie predicted a lot of things that would later come to pass. Like, for example, the whole premise of a website where people visit and they see someone getting tortured and killed for real. Now in the past, the idea of a snuff film, like the formal idea of a snuff film, was that it was a tape that was produced for profit, like specifically for profit, recorded onto a VHS tape and passed around in street corners in like a brown paper bag. Like that was always the classical definition of it. And as far as we know, those have never been proven to exist because those have never arisen like anything that was actually authentic. Um, but when it comes to snuff videos online, those, and especially like whole websites dedicated to that stuff, those have been proven to be very real, especially with this was before uh, Peter Scully and Daisy's Destruction, that whole website where people could, after having paid a hefty sum, and like you couldn't even search for it because it was, not only was it on the dark web, but a lot of like anything having to do with children, whether it's child pornography or in this case torture or death or anything like that. Um, they do exist, but generally speaking, apparently the way it works is that you have to know someone who is in there already, and they have to let you in, and there's all this different like secret ways of getting in, and so you can't just go looking for it. But the point is that those things do exist, and they're usually hidden behind paywalls. Now, granted, the person in this film, like, it's more of a conventionally accessed website, but yeah, the ones in real life, they're on the dark web, so they really are untraceable as far as because the whole idea of the deep web or the dark web is that your IP address gets bounced around computers all over the place, so they can never figure out where the content's coming from, or they can't really trace who is looking at the content in question. And so with something like Daisy's Destruction, and that was something that really existed, and it was very much a fixture of the dark web until Peter Scully and his little empire, after his empire crumbled, and thankfully he got arrested and tried and was found guilty, and that's obviously good because he was a monster. But this movie really did predict all of that. Now, granted, the victims in this film, they're adults, because this came out in the wake of all the various Saw sequels. Those were still going on, still a big draw every Halloween. And this feels more of a thriller. This feels like more of a thriller than it does even necessarily a horror film, but it's definitely got horror elements to it. And it says on the front, "Untraceable is the Silence of the Lambs for the Internet Age." James Thomas, KDNL TV, ABC, First Look, which always fills you with confidence whenever the positive critical things, they usually come, a lot of the ones where they're really trying to dig deep, they come from like local TV stations, um, and that's never a good sign. Except that I, if they asked me, I'd say, put me on the, put me on the Blu-ray cover, because, I truly think this movie. Perhaps people couldn't necessarily foresee a lot of the things that this movie was talking about at the time, but this movie predicted so much because of like not it wasn't even just Peter Scully and Daisy's Destruction. There have been other ones like that, especially and not even necessarily kids, but like there are ones that they have never been proven to be 100% real, but they've never been disproven either, and they're disturbing nonetheless. Or you have something like Luca Magnotta, One Lunatic, One Ice Pick. That was real, and it was him killing someone with an ice pick, and doing it for internet fame and notoriety and everything, like being notorious. Um, if you've ever seen on Netflix, there's an amazing documentary miniseries called "Don't Fuck with Cats," and it is about the Luca Magnotta case. And basically, what it talks about is that his crimes they were preceded by these snuff videos that he did, where he killed cats and he killed animals on camera and posted them on like Facebook and things. And but he was a really smart. Obviously, he was psychopathic, and he was extremely narcissistic. But he was also a genius as far as being able to cover his tracks. But he wasn't able to cover his tracks perfectly, and so with a dedicated team of like kind of amateur investigators online who worked with the real professional investigators, eventually they did finally catch him. And but it's like that again. This foreshadowed what would later happen with that case and with other cases like it. And then if on the dark web, on the deep web, which they're not the same thing, but in different deep web exploration videos I've seen people explore, and they've stumbled upon websites that claim to like experiment on homeless people and things like that. Which the problem with the deep web is that a lot of what's there today will not necessarily be there tomorrow, so it's hard to verify. And just the nature of it, it's like, unless it's like with a snuff video, it's like that, generally speaking, there are certain things you just can't fake. But when it comes to like a creepy website or something that says that they experiment on homeless people, it's like there's no way to verify that. So I mean, for me personally, I wouldn't take that too seriously. But then there's plenty to take seriously on the dark web, and this foreshadowed all of that. Plus, the ability to hack into technology from anywhere like that. I think you could do that in some ways back then, but it's only gotten more extensive now. I mean, then you even look in like video games, and you had Watch Dogs where someone was able to hack into the mainframe of the city and like change traffic lights and things like that. And actually, what happens here is that the killer is able to access the internal computer of Diane Lane's car and is able to like lock her doors and control it from the inside. And it's like, that's pretty creepy. But as computers get more as cars and the internal computers inside of them, as everything gets more digital and more integrated, it's like, well, that's a very, very probable reality that one would have to face. So yeah, I mean, I think that this really was misunderstood when it came out. And if you're at all interested in the real life internet criminals that have existed and have gotten, those are just the ones we caught, by the way, the Peter Scullys and the Luca Magnottas of the world. Those are just the ones we caught. There are other ones, I'm sure, that have never been caught. And it's just it's freaky, the world that we live in now, where you can be totally anonymous. And this also preceded the anonymous movement as well. Now, granted, they're not quite the same thing, but still, it's point being, you can be a nobody and remain a nobody, and yet get away with horrible things if you know what you're doing. And this movie foreshadowed all of that. It was way ahead of its time, I think. So if you ever want to see a movie that called it from much earlier, definitely give Untraceable a watch. Also, do your research on Peter Scully, but be warned, it's really disturbing stuff. And also, don't watch that Netflix series "Don't Fuck with Cats," because it's a great series. And but again, if you're sensitive, especially if you like animals getting hurt, it's not as explicit as I'm making it sound, but it's enough to where it'll probably make you kind of sad, if not disturbed or whatever, because it's disturbing. But that's the world we live in, boys and girls. The sooner you accept it, the sooner that you can work hard to fix it. And so, yeah, I'll leave you with that. If you like this and you like this kind of new direction, well, not entirely new kind of content, then please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, set phasers to stun, warp factor 5. Gonna continue with my drink of unboxing champions, and I will see you in the next video.